We're now on the top of Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Beis. The Gemara now explains Rava assuming that Niskal is a Poshea, and that's why the Rishon is Chai. So the Rishon, Vade Poshea, who he has to pay for the Nezek that his Guf created for the Sheni as Adam Amazik. And his Mammon would be Chayev for Nizakim of the Sheni, but only Nizke Gufo, not Nizke Kela, because it's Midin Bar. And even if he was Mafkir his bar, it makes no difference because you cannot be Mafkir your bar after Nefilas Pshia. So the Gemara analyzes that Gufo Machayev. Oh, I'm sorry, Sheni. Now we get to the Sheni. Gufa Machayev on any nizakim that are incurred to the shlishi through Gufo. So he's chayev because niskal is poshea. Now let's imagine that the shlishi broke a keli by coming in contact and tripping over the guf of the sheni. The sheni is considered Adam Amazik because Niskal Poshea, even vis-a-vis Caleb. Because in Adam Amazik, there's no difference between whether he's Mazik Adam or Mazik Caleb. Oh. Ta'avi lo lamod v'lo omad. Now we're going with Rabbi Yochanan's logic that the sheni is considered Poshea because he had time to get up and he dilly down. But Amamono, if let's say the mammon of the sheni caused damage to the shlishi, is potter. Why? I was not responsible for creating this bar. I didn't dig the bar. The Rishon, he was the one who was poshea, and he created a bar. I'm a anus in this nefila. And therefore, if I'm honest in the fila, only the Niskal Poshea applies to the Rishon, but not to the Sheni, then we apply the principle of Mafkin Nechasav, Liachin Nefilas Onus, and he's potter. Meisvei, the Gemara says, I have a brisa that contradicts Rava, and that brisa is addressing the case of Kadorim Uzagogim, that they were walking one behind the other, Kulon, Chayav al Niske Gufon, Upturin al Niske Mamonon. Each one that was Mazik, the other one, will be Chayav if the Hezek was caused by the Guf. And that means whether the Hezek was to another Guf, to the Sheni, or to his Mama. That's Adam Mazik. But Pturim al Niske Mamon. If their mammon, let's say, for example, the first guy to walk up front, avant-garde, he was the kadar with the kadarim, and now the sheni, the zago, tripped on the kadarim, then the rishon is potter, meaning the bala kadarim is potter. My love afilu rishon. And why is he potter? This price must be holding that niskal lav poshe is an onus. And therefore, he's not chayiv for the nizakim that were generated by his moment, by his broken shards of his kadar. And he was mafkir them after nefilas owners. And that's against Rabbi Yochanan. Lo, says Gemara. Lebar mi rishon. When it says in the brisa chayovin, kulam chayovim al niske gufan upturim al niske mamonim, that halach of kulam al niske mamon pturim, that's only referring to the sheni, the shlishi, etc., but not to the rishon. What are you going to do with the extra word kulam? Implying that even as far as the Rishon is concerned, he's patur for any nizakim that were generated by his hadarim that broke. Which means that niskal lav poshea and mafkin nechasav liachin nefilas onus is patur. Omar Rava Adavar Ava Kulan Hanizakim. Kulan is referring to those who suffered damages, not to those who are guilty of creating that damage, really. If you hold Niskal Poshea, So the Rishon is not included in this Mishnah. So Gemara asks the following kasha, hi mai. I don't get it. My kulam, listening on nizakin. Why did the Mishnah use the word kulam? Well, the Bryce, I should say, use the word kulam. That's an ambiguous word that seems to imply that all of them are in the same status of Pturim. If you want to say that the Bryce had in mind that only the Sheni and Shlishi, etc., are Pturim because that was an Afilas Ones, then it should have said Kol Hanizakin. Ella Amar Rava. So Rava now retracts his original interpretation of the Brisa and reinterprets the Brisa in the following way. The Brisa, which was quoted back on Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Aleph with regard to Kadorim and Zgogim, is assuming that Niskal Lav Poshea B'Nefilasa. Niskal Lav Poshea. No, if Niskal Lav Poshea, then the question is, why is the Rishon Chayev? And we're going to have to employ Rabbi Yochanan's logic of Hoyel Lo Lamod Miyad V'Lo Omad. So his Pshia was not in the falling, the stumbling, but rather in the fact that he didn't get up immediately. Therefore, the Rishon is Chayev Bein Beniske Gufo Desheni U Bein Beniske Mamono Desheni. So, in other words, if Hoyel Lo Lamod V'Lo Omad, then his body as a mazik becomes Odom HaMazik. So therefore, in Odom HaMazik, even if the Sheni's Kalim were broken as a result of his banging into the Odom on the floor, the Odom meaning the Rishon, you have to pay for it. But if, let's say, it was the Mammon of the Rishon, let's say the Kador that fell, and he tripped on the Kador, or the Kador hit him in the leg, whatever happened, then he's part of Tashlumin. Because the Nephilos Ones, because Niskala Poshea, and it's Mafkin Echos B'Yachid Nephilos Ones. Vasheni. The Sheni was Niskal, and he also should have gotten up, and he dilly-dallied. Is Chayav B'Niskei Shlishi, B'Niskei Gufo, Avolo B'Niskei Mamono. Why? Because the Shlishi, the Sheni is... One second, what was the calculation here? Yeah, he's chayav b'nizkei gufo, and now we're saying that he's not chayav as odom hamazik, and the reason he's not chayav as odom hamazik is because why isn't he chayav as an odom hamazik? He should have gotten up. Just want to say that b'nizkei gufo. Shel Shlishi, right? Avlo b'nizkei mamono shel Shlishi. In other words, as far as the Sheni is concerned, his causing damage to the Shlishi is midin bar. In other words, it's his guf is now considered a bar. And lo matzinu shebar chayav bo es hakelim. Wait a minute, why don't we apply that to the Rishon? All right, so here we have a whole long explanation for Rav. So again, Rav holds that a Niskal is not a Poshea. So the Rishon is not a Poshea in his Nefila, but because Hoylo Lamod V'lo Amad. The Sheni is also a Poshea because Hoylo Lamod V'lo Amad. But nevertheless, the Pshia of the Rishon is greater than the Pshia of the Sheni. Oh, now I'm reminding myself, yeah. Is therefore, even though we could be Machayev the Rishon as an Odom HaMazik, and that means he's going to have to pay for the Nezokim of the Kalim of the Sheni, but Ein L'chayev es HaSheni al Nezokim Shal Es HaSheni al Nezokim Sha'asa Gufo El Mishum Bar. For the Sheni vis-a-vis the Shlishi, there's no din of Adam Amazik, because his Pshia was not the same as the Pshia of the Rishon. Therefore, Eino Chayv L'Tashlum Niskei Gufo Shel Shlishi V'lo Niskei Mamona, because Bar is Potter Niskei Kelim. Okay? So Gemara now raises the following objection to Rav Hanicha. That makes sense. L'Shmuel Tiyoma Kol Takol Baru. That means that whether he's mafkirid or not mafkirid, it remains bar. That was this famous sheep of the Shmuel that we learned over and over again, that if you're chofer bar b'shus Rab, you're chay, even though you have no ownership over the bar against Rab. And therefore, according to the sheet of Shmuel, we can say that the gufo shel sheni can become a bar, even though a person is not mafkir his guf. Elo Rav, who says that the only time you chai for bar is if you dig a bar in your backyard, and then you mafkir all the area around the bar, but you have to retain ownership over the bar. And afkare in lo. Just 1 second. I'm sorry, I got it. Again, according to Shmuel, I'm sorry. According to Shmuel, even in a case where you dug the bar in your backyard and then you mafkir it, everything around it except for the bar, you still chayav mishum bar, even though you own the bar. And Rav holds that you're only chayav for bar if you're mafkir the bar. Like, for example, achol for bar b'shus Rab. But ilo, if he retains ownership on the bar, then lo. He's not chayv mishum bar. Again, he's chayv mishum moment amazik, but he's not chayv mishum bar. The Torah is only mechayv the chiddush of the breakthrough of bar is because bar b'shusarab is hefker. Is Michael Amema. Why is the sheni chayv mishum bar if the shlishi was damaged by the goof of the sheni? Why should that be so? After all, the Guf Hasheni wasn't mafkirid, and Rav holds you only chayv mishum bar if you were mafkirid. And the Gemara answers, Liolam kida omer meikara. Now we go back to the original formulation of Rava, which Rava rescinded, that the Rishon is chayv mishum nitkal poshea, and therefore he's chayv, whether it's the nizakim that were made by his body, or whether or not the nizakin to the sheni was a result of the mammon, because it's bar hamazik, and therefore he's chayav only for niskei gufa or the sheni, not for niskei mamona, because of bar is potter and kelim. Now the sheni was not poshea in his nafila, but rather he should have stood up. So he's not chayiv on the zikim that were resulting from his guf, b'toras harav amazik. And therefore he's potter on his zakim that were done by his mammon, because he was mafkir his nechasim liachar nefilas ones. But then we had a kasha. The kashalach, the Mishnah, the Brisa says kulam chayavim, which seems to imply that even the sheni should be chayiv for niskei gufa, and even the Rishon should be potter for niskei mamono. So the Rishon is potter for niskei mamono. How could that be if Rav is holding that niskal poshea? Tirgum Rav Hadabar ben Yume Kami de Ravina shehuza kelim v'kelim. The Brisa has in mind a case where the kelim of the sheni were damaged through the kelim of the Rishon. And in that case, the Rishon is potur from Tashlubei Nezek, because he can only be chayav for his moment of mazik b'toras bar, and bar is potur in his kekim. And this leads us to the last piece of Gemara here before the Mishnah. Omar Mar. The Brisa, back on Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Aleph, said that im machmas harishon noflu, if as a result of the first guy, the sheni and the shlishi, as a domino theory fell, then a rishon chai b'nizkei kulam. The Gemara clarifies. Machmas Rishon Hechi Nofa. What does it mean that they fell because of the Rishon? And the Gemara offers two possibilities. Rav Papa Omar, de Paskali Orche Shildo, that the first one completely closed the derech, the rechov, let's call it the street of Rosh Hashanah, like an avela. Shilda is an avela, like an avela that's thrown over the width of the road, and therefore he's chayav in niskei kula, because anyone who goes behind him or after him is going to be nitkal because of him. There's not enough room to go on the side. You can't blame anybody. Well, why did you go on the side? Rav Zvid Omar kish chutra disamiyusa, which means the walking stick of a blind man who tries to find his derech, with the stick. And sometimes he puts the stick down to the rochav haderech, and there's no makom, there's no place to go beyond that point because it covers the entire rochav of the derech. And if the Rishon did that, then he's chayav in his kekum. So Rashi learns that there's no machlokas here between Rav Papa and Rav Zvid. They are simply giving two different examples. 1 second. I'm just beginning to remember that I think I have left something out. Okay. So this is a long discussion here, which we skipped, but in the meantime, so let's see if we can figure out, according to other Rishonim, what is the machlokas here between Rav Papa and Rav Zvid? Oh, I finally found it. So this is a summary of Tosfos Divrei HaMaskil Kichutra, the last Tosfos on Lamed Aleph Amid Beis. Yeshno machlokes beineim shel das Rav Zvid ein lechayvus harishon al nizkei shlishi v'ofen sheposkel yarcha kishilda. So Rav Zvid, the second opinion, who quoted the blind man's stick, would disagree and reject Rav Papa. Why? Me'acher shahaya mutal al hashlishi lahazir li'acher lacher sharob nefilas hasheni li'zoyer. In other words, the shlishi was guilty after he saw that the sheni fell. So why should there be a payment for the shlishi, for any damages incurred by the shlishi? Therefore, Rav Zvid offers a different interpretation. Why is the Rishon chayav for niskei shlishi kechuta disamusa? Ha'iver mata es maklo b'alakson. The blind person, when he steps down with the stick, it's on an angle. V'yim halach bala kora b'ofen kazeh lo yochel haya shlishi liros es hasheni shenofa. In other words, somehow the body of the sheni blocks the view of the shlishi, and therefore me'achar shasheni nitkal b'rosh hakora ve'ilu hashlishi nitkal b'sofa. Therefore, the shlishi is able to collect damages. And this leads us to the Mishnah here on the bottom of Lamed Aleph Amid Beis. So one is carrying a barrel, and the other is carrying a beam. Right, there's another case of Pasach, Bechavis, V'siyim, Bekad. So the Kad, or the Chavis, if you will, broke by the virtue of the collision with the beam. What? Why? shalazerishus lahalach, v'lazerishus lahalach. This is going to lead us to the famous sugya on Daf Lamed Beis for tomorrow of Mazik is ishto b'tashmish amit. If each one is rishus to be there, then no one is chayav for the nezikin of the other. However, hoya bala kora rishon or bala chovis achron. If the bala kora was going up front, and even though he's allowed to be there, then nishbra chovis bakora poter bala kora. However, v'im amad bala kora on the top of Lamed Beis chayav. V'im amad bala chovis amod poter. So we're very familiar with this Mishnah. We've seen it already in the past, that if the Bala Korah had every right to stop dead in his tracks, like for example, Amad Lekatev, then the responsibility is on the Bala Korah to protect a Bala Chavis, to protect his Chavis. And therefore, if his Chavis bangs into the Bala Korah, he was Nisdaris, Yosemite, he went too fast, then the Bala Korah is put. But in Amad Bala Korah, meaning all of a sudden he was Omed Lafrush, not Lekatev, and that's not something that he's allowed to do in Rishus Harabim, and the Baal HaChavos doesn't have to anticipate that, then Chayav, the Bala Korah has to pay the Tashlumei Nezek. Im Omer, but however, if the Bala Korah, when he took a breath, he took a break to rest, he said to the Bala Chavos, Amod, pot, he gave him ample warning. Hoya Bala Chavis Rishon Bala Korah. So all those cases where the Bala Korah was up front, now we switch it around. The Bala Chavis is in the back. He's in the front. V'nishbara Chavis b'Korah Chayav. The Bala Korah should be Chayav because we assume that the Bala Chavis was walking the normal way, and the Bala Korah somehow was Nizdares. He jumped ahead of himself fast, and he went too fast. He violated the speeding zone, and therefore he went into the chavis and broke the chavis. But in Amad Bala Chavis, if the Bala Chavis all of a sudden stops, and he didn't warn the Bala Korah that I'm about to stop, part of the Bala Korah doesn't have to pay. Why didn't you warn me? Why did you stop? Im Amar Bala Korah Amod Chay. But if the Bala Chavis had notified the Bala Korah I'm standing, then the Bala Korah is responsible. Okay, this will have to wait for the Gemara, but basically, if two people are walking in the derech, one is carrying a ner, and the other is carrying pishtan, which is very flammable, flax, and they were poguz seven. Now the pishtan was nisraf as a result of the ner. Then we're going to go through all the dinim and all the conditions that were applicable in the previous case of Bala Korah and Bala Chavis, and would apply to the Bala Ner and the Bala Pishtan. And that leads us to the Gemara here of Boy Minei Rabba Bar Nosa Mirav Huna Masechet Ishto B'Tashmish Hamito Ma. Mirz Hashem, we'll pick up tomorrow. So let me wish you a great day, and I'll see you in Mirz Hashem tomorrow.